Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. After the Alaska summit, action has shifted to the Oval Office. Donald Trump will meet Zelensky and European leaders. Will it be drama or diplomacy? A handshake or another shouting match? We'll be tracking that. Also looking back at the Alaska showdown, it was advantage Putin. We will tell you why. What will a Ukraine peace deal look like and why the possibility of peace centers on the Donbas? Also tonight, the Alaska summit's top 6 viral videos, from a clapping president to American stealth bombers. What is the internet talking about? Back home, Putin picks up the phone, briefing Prime Minister Modi on what went down in Alaska. We'll tell you why it matters for India. Plus, decoding the art of the deal Putin style. Also in New Delhi, China's foreign minister is visiting. We will discuss what's on the agenda. What's the GST reform that has stocks soaring in India, and what does it mean for you? And the new Gen Alpha words that have made it to the dictionary. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. China lashes out at Germany, warns Berlin against inciting confrontation and hyping up tensions after the German foreign minister accused China of aggression in the Asia-Pacific region. He cited Beijing's behavior in the Taiwan Strait and the East and South China Seas. Myanmar's junta sets 28th of December as the poll date. The announcement comes amid a raging civil war which has put much of the country out of its control. The junta has offered cash rewards to opposition fighters who are willing to give up their arms ahead of the vote. US President Donald Trump targets mail-in ballots, says he will lead a movement against it. Trump wants to eliminate the voting method before next year's midterm elections. He has spent years railing against it, even though he has voted by mail himself. Nearly a third of America uses mail-in ballots. Egypt says it is willing to join a potential international force deployed to Gaza, but only if it is backed by a UN Security Council resolution. This comes as Hamas negotiators in Cairo received a new ceasefire proposal. The plan calls for an initial 60-day truce and release of hostages in 2 batches. And Iran's president is in Armenia to hold talks on a corridor linking Azerbaijan with its enclave near Iran's border. The land corridor is part of a peace deal which was signed by Armenia and Azerbaijan in the US earlier this month. Tehran has long opposed this transit route.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
It was quite the Friday for Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ukrainian president was sitting by the phone waiting for just about any update. After all, thousands of kilometers away, his country's future was being decided. On Friday night, Donald Trump met Russian President Vladimir Putin. The meeting was in Alaska, a summit to end the war in Ukraine. It did not end with an immediate ceasefire, but a flurry of diplomacy followed. Trump dialed Zelensky, he called the NATO leaders. There were intense discussions. And now the Ukrainian president has landed in Washington, D.C. In about an hour from now, he will meet Donald Trump. Of course, this won't be easy for him. The last time he was here, things spiraled. Zelensky met Donald Trump at the Oval Office. It turned into a shouting match. Trump called him reckless. He accused Zelensky of gambling with World War III. The meeting had to be cut short and Zelensky walked out in haste. It looked like Washington-Kiev ties needed some desperate CPR.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting?
And yet here he is again. Zelensky will step into the White House again for another round with Donald Trump. But this time he's not going alone. With Zelensky is a parade of European leaders. They will all attend the meeting with him because this one is too important to fail. A lot hinges on this meeting. The future of Ukraine, the future of Europe, and what the post-war continent will look like. So let's break it down for you tonight. First of all, who is coming with Zelensky? Like I said, an entire entourage of European leaders. There's UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and EU President Ursula von der Leyen.
Ultimately, our desire tomorrow is to present a united front between Europeans and Ukrainians at this moment of conflict resolution, reaffirming who is on the side of peace, who is on the side of international law. But above all, how can we collectively ensure that the international order is respected and that our collective security is protected?
We've got to make sure there is peace, that it is lasting peace, and that it is fair and that it is just. And that's why I'm travelling to Washington with other European leaders to discuss this face-to-face with President Trump and President Zelensky, because it's in everyone's interests, it's in the UK's interests that we get this right.
This is the first of its kind meeting, the first time such a big EU delegation is heading to Washington on such short notice. They all want to project unity, maybe to prevent another Oval Office ambush. So EU leaders are there as guardrails, not battering rams. They cannot directly confront Trump, but their very presence shows how much is at stake. However, the White House has bigger things to worry about at the moment, like is Zelensky going to wear a suit? Last time this was a point of contention, so this time the Trump administration is already clearing the air. They want him to wear a suit and tie to this meeting. But the Ukrainian president obviously has different priorities. For Zelensky, the starting line is simple: stop the nightly missile barrages. Just yesterday, Russian strikes killed 10 people in Ukraine. So for Kiev, priority number one is a ceasefire. And Europe agrees with this. But again, Trump is not on board. He has gone cold on the ceasefire first idea. Instead, he is talking about a permanent peace deal, one that skips the pause button altogether. And for Kiev, this is a nightmare scenario. How do you negotiate when bombs are literally falling? Which brings us to what Ukraine wants. On paper, Ukraine's ideal peace deal is crystal clear. Full restoration of all occupied land, that's Crimea, Donbas, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and all others. But the ground reality may not allow this. Remember, this is a war that has gone on for more than 3 years. The borders have changed. Kiev may have Western weapons, but it does not have the manpower. It cannot win this land back in a war. And that would mean ceding Donbas and Crimea. In fact, Trump has already hinted at it. In a post on Truth Social, he said, and I quote, "Remember how it started. No getting back Obama given Crimea and no going into NATO by Ukraine. Some things never change." So Trump is already stating the obvious, but Zelensky remains defiant, at least for now.
Since the territorial issue is so important, it should be discussed only by the leaders of Ukraine and Russia at the trilateral Ukraine, United States, Russia. So far, Russia gives no sign that trilateral will happen. And if Russia refuses, then new sanctions must follow.
But that's not the only concession that Kiev will be making. Look at the second part of the post. No going into NATO by Ukraine. That's what Trump wrote. That's something that Zelensky has rallied for. Kiev joining NATO. Russia would say that's how the war began, with Ukraine's NATO ambitions and the West indulging it. But looks like he will have to forget about it. Instead, there's talk of a makeshift security guarantee package.
It means that the United States is potentially prepared to be able to give Article 5 security guarantees but not from NATO, directly from the United States and other European countries. That is big. I mean, really big.
Does it mean boots on the ground? What does it mean, but logistically?
I think part of the discussion that we're going to have on Monday throughout the day, because there's going to be breakout sessions there, is exactly the specifics of what the Ukrainians feel that they need. Because remember, as mediators, we were at this summit to advance the Ukrainian position, and we did that, and we did it successfully.
And that's why today matters so much. If Trump can get Zelensky to swallow the Donbas loss, it would set a precedent. That land can be taken by force, and the West will eventually sign off. So while the Trump-Putin meet in Alaska grabbed the headlines, the Washington meeting may decide the end game. If Ukraine holds its ground, it may emerge battered but intact. If not, it will walk out weaker than it walked in. Today's meeting is basically part two. Part one was on Friday. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin met in Alaska. All eyes were on the outcome of that summit. But after 3 hours of talks, who came out on top? The short answer, Vladimir Putin. It wasn't as clear on Friday, though. First, it seemed like the whole thing was pointless, that no one got anything. But over the weekend, more announcements came in, more statements on Truth Social. So 2 days later, the verdict is clear. Putin was the winner in Alaska. And I will give you 4 reasons why. Number one, the optics. Trump rolled out the red carpet in Alaska. He welcomed Vladimir Putin with a warm handshake and fly-pasts. This was impossible 1 year ago. The US spent 3 years trying to isolate Putin. They pushed for an arrest warrant against him. But now look at things. The Russian president was welcomed like a friend, like an ally of the United States. Reason number 2, why it was advantage Putin. Trump set a trap for himself. His initial strategy was perfect. He tried to downplay the expectations. The White House called it a listening exercise. Had Trump stuck to that, it would have been fine. No expectations, so no losses. But at the last minute, Trump made a U-turn. He issued a threat to Russia.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences.
That was on Wednesday before the meeting. Trump said this before the meeting. He warned of severe consequences if a ceasefire was not agreed. Obviously, there was no ceasefire in Alaska. What's more, Trump abandoned his call completely. Listen to what he said on Saturday, his message on Saturday. It was determined by all that the best way to end the horrific war between Russia and Ukraine is to go directly to a peace agreement, which would end the war, and not a mere ceasefire agreement, which oftentimes do not hold up. So Trump went into the meeting calling for a ceasefire, and he came out of the meeting saying that ceasefires do not hold up. This was a big concession by Trump, because this was always Russia's position. They have preferred a peace deal over a ceasefire. Then we come to reason number 3, why Putin won. He gave no concessions. His demands have been clear from the start. No NATO membership for Ukraine, limits on Ukraine's military, and recognizing Moscow's hold over newly occupied land. This is what he wanted. And he did not shift from those positions. He stuck to them.
Как вы хорошо We are convinced that for the Ukrainian settlement to be sustainable and long-term, all the root causes of the crisis, which have been discussed repeatedly, must be eliminated, all of Russia's legitimate concerns must be taken into account, and a fair balance in the security sphere in Europe and the world as a whole must be restored. We hope that Kyiv and the European capitals will perceive all of this in a constructive manner and will not create any obstacles or attempt to disrupt the emerging progress through provocations or behind-the-scenes intrigues.
So Putin did not concede anything. At the same time, he secured some gains. For starters, no more sanctions. Trump had threatened crippling secondary tariffs and sanctions, but his officials have now ruled them out. They say sanctions have not made a difference in 3 years. And secondly, some bilateral progress was made. Again, this was not on the table. It was not part of the agenda going into the meeting. Trump was only interested in talking about Ukraine, but Putin squeezed in other issues, like space and tech cooperation. Which brings us to the fourth reason why Russia had the advantage. Look at Trump's flip-flop after the summit. Before the talks, he was focused on convincing Putin. He wanted the Russians to end the war. But after the talks, that changed. Trump realized that he could not sway Putin. He admitted that no deal was struck.
There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them.
Cut to this morning. Look at Trump's social media post. I'm quoting. President Zelensky of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to, or he can continue to fight. So now Trump is putting the onus on Ukraine. He says it is Zelensky who must end the war, which has also been Russia's position. Make concessions, end the war. If you add these four factors, one thing becomes quite clear. Trump was outplayed in Alaska, and it's not a surprise. Every peace talk is a product of the background. Look at the background to this one. Russia is making gains on the battlefield. Ukraine is low on soldiers and arms. The mediator, Donald Trump, clearly likes Putin more than Zelensky, plus his intentions are all over the place. Trump doesn't care how the war ends. He just wants credit when it ends. And since he cannot force Putin, he's turning to someone he can, Zelensky. In this background, Alaska was always going to end in one of two ways, with a Putin victory or as a dud. Trump is ready to give concessions to Putin, but Zelensky and the Europeans may not be on board. They have their own conditions. And they're ready to block any deal that looks one-sided. Now, given this gap in expectations, is a peace deal even possible? And if it is, what would it look like? Tonight, we'll try to examine that. What would a peace deal look like? Starting with the most basic question, what are the core issues, the key points that a potential deal must address? There are basically two things here. First, the status of Russian-occupied territories. And second, Ukraine's NATO ambitions, its demand for security guarantees. These are the two core issues. Let's start with the status of occupied territories. As of today, Russia has occupied almost 20% of Ukrainian land. These are the areas we're talking about. And out of these, Putin wants to keep a large part. He does not want to return a lot of this territory to Ukraine, especially Donetsk and Luhansk. Putin wants to keep them. These two regions make up what is called the Donbas. It's a key battlefront in this war. Russia currently occupies most of it, almost all of Luhansk, and around 3/4 of Donetsk. That's more than 46,000 square kilometers of land occupied by Russia. What about Ukraine? Well, it still controls a significant strip, around 6,600 square kilometers, mostly in Donetsk. And this is where the fighting is intense. Russia is pushing hard. It is trying to recapture the remaining Ukrainian strongholds. And Putin wants Kiev to withdraw completely from here to hand over the remaining territory to Moscow. So that's one part. The second is Crimea, and he did raise the status of Crimea. This is a peninsula that once belonged to Ukraine. Moscow occupied it in 2014. And now Putin says Crimea is Russian territory. He wants formal recognition of Russian territory. He wants the world to accept that Crimea is indeed a part of Russia. In return, Moscow is ready to make a concession. Here's what they will do. They will freeze the front lines in the south, in regions like Kherson and Zaporizhia. But even that comes with conditions. Putin has refused to agree to a ceasefire, not until a final deal is in place. And that directly contradicts Ukraine's position. Zelensky wanted a ceasefire first. He wanted the strikes to stop, the daily drone attacks, the missile barrages. He wanted an end to all of it. And for a negotiation to begin only after the ceasefire. But Russia says no. It wants an all-or-nothing deal. And Putin seems to have Trump's support on this. Look at his statement on Truth Social. President Zelensky of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to, or he can continue to fight. This is what Trump has said. So the onus has shifted to Zelensky now. Where does he stand on Russia's demands? Will he cede territory to end the war? Here's how the Ukrainian president responded.
Russia is still unsuccessful in Donetsk region. Putin has been unable to take it for 12 years. And the constitution of Ukraine makes it impossible to give up territory or trade land. Since the territorial issue is so important, it should be discussed only by the leaders of Ukraine and Russia at the trilateral Ukraine, United States, Russia. So far, Russia gives no sign that trilateral will happen. And if Russia refuses, then new sanctions must follow. Third, it's important that America agrees to work with Europe to provide security guarantees for Ukraine.
So there's no agreement on the issue of occupied territories. Then we come to the second core issue, that is security guarantees, and here's what it means. Ukraine wants assurances from the West. It wants protection in case Russia attacks again. But will the US agree to this? As of today, Washington says it is willing to step up. And that's according to the US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. He gave an interview yesterday where he said Trump and Putin have agreed on security guarantees.
It means that the United States is potentially prepared to be able to give Article 5 security guarantees, but not from NATO, directly from the United States and other European countries. That is big. I mean, really big.
Does it mean boots on the ground? What does it mean, but logistically?
I think part of the discussion that we're going to have on Monday throughout the day, because there's going to be breakout sessions there, is exactly the specifics of what the Ukrainians feel that they need. Because remember, as mediators, we were at this summit to advance the Ukrainian position, and we did that. And we did it successfully. Now it's for us to drill down on the granular details of exactly what the Ukrainians need to give them a sense of security in the future, and, by the way, what the Europeans need as well.
Witkoff called them robust, but NATO won't give Ukraine any security guarantees. As for Kiev's bid to join NATO, that's out of the question now. Russia says it's a non-starter, and Western powers agree. So instead of NATO membership, Trump is proposing something else for Ukraine. He's proposing independent security guarantees. What does that mean? It means guarantees not from NATO, but independently from member states. So guarantees from the United States and some other European countries. If Russia attacks again, the US would respond. Some Europeans would respond too, but not all of NATO. That's what it means. This is a broad understanding. The specifics, as you heard, are yet to be discussed. As you know, the leaders are meeting shortly in Washington. Before the talks, Brussels spelled out its expectations.
We must have strong security guarantees to protect both Ukraine and Europe's vital security interests. Ukraine must be able to uphold its sovereignty and its territorial integrity. There can be no limitations on Ukrainian armed forces, be it cooperation with or other third countries or assistance from other third countries, no limitations for the Ukrainian armed forces.
So that's what Europe wants. No limits on Ukraine's defense and a steady flow of military supplies without delay or preconditions. Basically, Europe wants strong defenses in place. It wants Ukraine to be able to strike back if needed. But will Trump agree to that? What he wants is a quick deal. But as things stand, it's getting more complicated with more players involved and more demands on the table. Diplomacy these days does not unfold in quiet rooms or long memos. It plays out on our screens in little clips of less than a minute. Same for Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. When they met in Alaska, it was not just about ceasefires or sanctions, it was more about spectacle. And like all good spectacles, the best way to remember it is through the viral videos, the ones that dominated feeds from Anchorage to Moscow. So here are the top 6 viral moments from Alaska. Number 1, Trump clapping for Putin. The scene was almost cinematic. A frigid Alaskan sky, 2 planes touching down on a Cold War airbase, 1 American-made, 1 Russian. Red carpets rolled out to perfection. Trump waited until Putin appeared, and then it happened. The American president clapped as his Russian counterpart walked towards him, visibly happy to see the man Trump once called a genius. Netizens could not decide what it was. Was it deference or just Trump being Trump? Either way, the video was replayed endlessly. The second video is a show of American strength. As Putin walked on the red carpet, a B-2 stealth bomber sliced across the Alaskan sky. It was flagged by F-35 jets, a reminder of who really owns the skies. After all, Putin was on American soil. Cameras caught him glancing upward, assessing the American air power. The message from Washington was clear: welcome to America, don't forget the hardware. The third video is of Putin hitching a ride with Trump. The two leaders were walking together. Both their cars were in place, their security standing in guard, but suddenly they had a change of mind. The Russian president slid into the Beast. That's the US president's armored limousine. It's called the Beast. And just like that, without notice, the two men shared a ride. They shared some laughs too, and the internet exploded. Was this flattery? Or was Trump simply showing off? Whatever it was, it became one of the summit's defining images: enemies carpooling in Alaska. Video number 4 is Putin's encounter with Western media. Reporters from both sides were present at the venue. They were shouting questions, but the Western media was very audible, throwing questions at the Russian president. One of them asked, "When will you stop killing civilians?" And what was Putin's response? An expression that you can see now. Putin smirked. He shrugged his shoulders, he raised his eyebrows, and at one point, he even threw an exaggerated glance.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Come on, guys. Thank you, press. Let's go. Thank you, press. Let's go. Thank you, press.
Number 5, Putin speaks in English. The Russian president is famous for sticking to his language. He rarely speaks in English, especially in public, but he did on the podium beside Trump. The two were talking about the summit, and Putin said, "Next time in Moscow," a suggestion for the venue of the next meet. The accent was thick, the words were simple, but the message was calculated. And it reminded everyone that Putin, even in English,
Thank you very much.
knows how to own a moment.
Again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Was happening on the main stage. There was action in the meeting rooms too. At one point, the focus was on Sergei Lavrov's sweatshirt. It was emblazoned with CCCP, that stands for the USSR, the Soviet Union. For some, it was nostalgia. For others, a provocation. After all, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union once. It only got independence in 1991 when the Union fell apart. So the sweatshirt too was seen as a message. Either way, the cameras loved it, and so did Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Putin even joked about it, calling Lavrov an imperialist. In the end, the Alaska summit produced no ceasefire, but it gave us an avalanche of viral moments. It was pageantry dressed as diplomacy. And maybe that was the point. The cameras were not just recording history, they were the stage itself. Days before meeting Putin in Alaska, Trump mentioned two words: land swap. In real terms, it meant less swapping and more giving. But Trump's labels aside, the so-called land swap is tied to the possibility of a peace deal. And the land in question is the Donbas region. This is a mineral-rich region in eastern Ukraine. It is an old industrial heartland. Even historically, it has been fiercely contested. And during the ongoing war, Donbas has seen some of the deadliest fighting. But why does Putin want it so bad? Why doesn't Zelensky want to give it up? Why is this region so important, and what would a Donbas surrender mean for Moscow and Kiev? Our next report tells you.
After the meeting in Alaska between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, the possibility of lasting peace in Ukraine centers on one thing: persuading Kiev to give up Donbas, the region at the heart of what Putin calls the root causes of the war, and therefore one of his top demands to end the conflict. Donbas is a mineral-rich, industrial region in eastern Ukraine. It includes Luhansk and Donetsk. Donbas runs from outside Mariupol in the south to the northern border with Russia, and this region is crucial, with a history mired in conflicts. Donbas has been contested since Ukraine first became a state in the early 20th century.
The greatest battle of all time has been fought in
Communists and Ukrainian nationalists battled for the industrial region's riches. At the time, most of the region's population was Ukrainian. Until Stalin's forced industrialization brought a shift. It pushed Russian workers to the factories in Donbas, while fueling mass killings of Ukrainian farmers and the suppression of their language. By the time the Soviet Union collapsed, about 2/3 of residents in the region considered Russian their first language. In 2014, driven by his vision of historical unity of Russian speakers across the former Soviet Union, Putin made his move. Moscow seized Crimea from Ukraine and engineered a Russian-backed separatist movement in Donbas. This insurgency created an anti-Russian backlash in the region. But a war simmered for 8 years, until February 2022, when Putin launched his full-scale invasion. Since then, Donbas has been the site of the deadliest battles in the war in Ukraine. Cut to today, Kremlin has conquered about 87% of the region. Luhansk is almost entirely under Russian control, but 30% of Donetsk is still controlled by Ukraine. The war has cost tens of thousands of lives, with at least 1.5 million Ukrainians having fled the region. More than 3 million people are living under Russian occupation. Another 300,000 people are in the parts where Ukraine still has control. And now, Donbas is one of Putin's crucial demands. But Zelensky has consistently said that Ukraine will not hand over Donbas, fearing that it could be used as a springboard for future attacks. Kyiv has spent millions of dollars fortifying the region. Giving it up could leave Kyiv even more vulnerable.
To withdraw from the Donetsk region to unfortified areas, and then Putin will say, "Oh, I changed my mind. I will advance further again when we have nothing."
Donbas is a critical steel-producing area, rich in minerals and coal. Surrendering it comes with a heavy price. Plus, even if Zelensky could, the country's constitution makes it very difficult to give up territory. It requires the approval of the parliament and a referendum of the people. And despite being fatigued by war, about 75% of Ukrainians object to formally ceding any land to Russia.
Our guys died for this land, not so that we would give them away just like that. These are our territories, our people live there. No matter how many Russian-speaking people there are, these are our Ukrainians.
So now, Zelensky stands at a crossroads. The withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from Donbas in exchange for a promise to freeze the conflict. It is a near impossible dilemma of land versus life.
I'm sure India was tracking Alaska closely. New Delhi tends to stay out of such summits, especially when there is no concrete outcome expected. But this time, India was not only watching, it also released a statement. India welcomed the summit between Putin and Trump. It also praised both leaders for their commitment to peace. And this was actually the second statement. The first one came out when the summit was announced. And then today, President Putin dialed Prime Minister Modi. He briefed the Indian Prime Minister on what happened in Alaska, which raises two questions. Number one, why is India so interested in the process? And number two, what do the outcomes mean for India? Well, the why is pretty simple. Right from the outset, India has called for talks. New Delhi has said that diplomacy is the answer. So this is vindication of India's long-standing position. And now we have more at stake. India finds itself in the middle of Trump's strategy. He's been using tariffs to pressure Russia. Not direct tariffs, but secondary tariffs. Meaning, these tariffs are imposed on countries that buy from Russia. In this case, countries like India. Trump has slapped 25% secondary tariffs on India. That's on top of the existing 25%. So the overall tariff rate is 50%. And the pressure is not letting up. If anything, the US is doubling down. Trump's trade advisor has published an op-ed. Listen to what he says. India's dependence on Russian crude is opportunistic and deeply corrosive of the world's efforts to isolate Putin's war economy. In effect, India acts as a global clearinghouse for Russian oil, converting embargoed crude into high-value exports while giving Moscow the dollars it needs. If India wants to be treated as a strategic partner of the US, it needs to start acting like one. Two things. First, India is not desperate to be your partner. If we were, we would have cut a deal with you like Japan or Europe. Trump's problem is that India is standing up to him, that it has not caved like others. That's the first thing to note. Secondly, he's factually wrong. India is not buying Russian crude to help Putin. India is buying it to stabilize the market. In fact, the US encouraged these purchases. The Biden administration asked India to buy as much Russian crude as it wanted. The problem is not India. The problem is American foreign policy or the lack of it. Also look inward. America's trade with Russia is booming. It is 20% up since Trump came to office. Says who? Russian President Putin.
Incidentally, when the new administration came to power, bilateral trade started to grow. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work.
I'll repeat that for you. US-Russia trade has increased by 20% since Trump took office. So will Washington be imposing tariffs on itself? I'm guessing not. The fact is, Trump needs a villain, and he's decided that India will be that villain. Unfortunately for him, New Delhi is not playing ball, which brings us to the second question. What do these talks mean for India? Well, there are three aspects to it. Number one, if the war ends, it's good news for the markets. No more supply chain issues, no more energy disruptions. India's economy will benefit from that stability. Number two, it's one less irritant with Trump. If the US and Russia can be friends, it frees up India. New Delhi does not have to worry about offending either side. Just think back to 2018. That was also a period of Trump-Putin bonhomie. And that's when India bought the S-400 air defenses from Russia. As it turned out, it was the right call, because Trump did not sanction India. He punished Turkey for buying the same defense system, but he gave India a free pass. Which brings us to the third aspect. Once the war ends, Russia's military complex will be free. Right now, it is focused on the war needs. A lot of foreign shipments have been delayed, including the last S-400 batch to India. So if there's no war, Russia's exports should pick up. Of course, this is all hypothetical. What we saw in Alaska was just the first step. Neither side has agreed to a peace deal. Like most of the world, that's what India will want: a full and comprehensive peace deal. We've spoken about Alaska, we've spoken about the peace talks, but at the center of it all is one man. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. He does that himself. I'm talking about Vladimir Putin. Because this is not just a clash of countries or armies. It's also a clash of personalities, a clash of negotiating styles. In Alaska, Putin prevailed over Trump. And tonight we'll try to understand why. What is Putin's art of the deal? For starters, I'm sure experience helps. Putin was a KGB intelligence officer for 16 years. He's been leading Russia for 26 years. That sort of experience gives you a lot of confidence. It helps you outplay your rivals, because negotiations are like any other skill. The more you do, the better you get. And Putin has his own playbook to achieve that. It has three main tactics. Number one, the delay game. Vladimir Putin is infamous for being late to meetings. He likes to keep his counterparts waiting. And I'll give you some examples. He made former German Chancellor Angela Merkel wait for 4 hours. He made Japan's Shinzo Abe wait for 3 hours. Pope Francis waited for 50 minutes and Barack Obama for 40 minutes. Some experts say this is a power move, sort of like a stamp of authority. You make your rival wait. You make them lose their nerve. You unsettle them. And finally, you make an entrance. Chances are this is not a punctuality issue, because Putin is never late to press conferences or interviews. He is only late when meeting counterparts. In fact, he did that to Trump this year. In March, Putin and Trump were supposed to have a call, but Putin was busy at a press event. He delayed the call by an hour. In the end, someone had to remind him. Take a look at this.
По заявлениям Дмитрия Сергеевича Пескова, у вас разговор должен до 18 часов состояться с Дональдом Трампом. Не знаю, насколько он... Работа такая. Ну, не знаю, сейчас надо посмотреть, что на эту фразу скажет Трамп. Может быть, он любит интервью давать, может, уже отреагирует. Трампа не упоминал, я Пескова. Не-не-не, он знает, что у нас дискуссии.
Tactic number 2. Stunts to unsettle the rival. I'll give you 2 examples. The first was in 2007. Putin was meeting German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Out of nowhere, he decided to bring his dog into the meeting. Again, this could have been planned. because Merkel had a fear of dogs. She was bitten way back in 1995. So did Putin weaponize that fear? Listen to Merkel's own words. I tried to ignore the dog even though he was moving more or less right next to me. I interpreted Putin's facial expressions as meaning that he was enjoying the situation. Was this a small demonstration of power? I just thought, stay calm, concentrate on the photographers, it will pass. When it was actually over, I did not say a word to Putin about it. Here's another example, this time from 2022. Putin was hosting President Macron of France. Look at the table in between them. It's nearly 20 feet long. The same table was used with Germany's Olaf Scholz as well. The official reason was social distancing, but it looks more political than social. The table represented the gulf between the two sides, Putin calling for Ukraine's neutrality and Europe supporting Ukraine's NATO bid. We all know how that ended. Which brings us to the final tactic. Putin leaves his ego behind. The Russian president may rule as an autocrat, but in diplomacy, he indulges others. Alaska was a prime example of that. Before the summit, he praised Donald Trump. He said the US president was fighting for global peace. And at the summit, he did the same thing. He supported one of Trump's biggest claims, that if he was president, if Trump was president in 2022, Putin would not have invaded. Listen to this.
Today, we hear President Trump saying that if he were president, there would be no war. I think that would have been the case. I confirm that because President Trump and I have established a strong, practical, and trusting relationship.
In private, there was more praise. Trump later revealed it in an interview. Let me quote from what he said. Vladimir said a little while ago he had never seen anyone do so much so fast. He said your country is as hot as a pistol, and a year ago he thought it was dead. That's what Putin told Trump. It reveals a key element of his strategy. Putin understands how to manipulate and sway the US president. You simply praise him, and looks like it worked. Trump's heart of the deal was about overt moves, borderline childish ones, like flying B-2 bombers over the summit. But Putin was more measured. His moves focused on the person in front of him, not the cameras. As things stand, that's what worked in Alaska. One year ago, this headline would have been weird. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi touches down in Delhi. After all, India and China have spent the last few years in hostility. Soldiers deployed along the border, flights suspended, apps banned, visas not issued, investments under scrutiny. The tension was palpable. Multiple rounds of border talks did not yield a thaw. But thanks to Donald Trump, there's a realignment. He may not have planned it, but his trade war has pushed India and China to try to work together. And now Wang Yi is in New Delhi. This evening, he met India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar.
Having seen a difficult period in our relationship, Excellency, our two nations now seek to move ahead. This requires a candid and constructive approach from both sides. In that endeavor, we must be guided by the three mutuals: mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutual interest. Differences must not become disputes, nor competition conflict.
Differences between the two countries should not become disputes. Competition must not become conflict. Those are the Indian Foreign Minister's words. He said the India-China relationship must be guided by three mutuals: mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutual interest. Wang Yi also emphasized on the need for peace and better ties.
We maintained peace and tranquility in the border areas and resumed Indian pilgrimage. We should firm up confidence to dispel interference, expand cooperation, and to further consolidate the momentum of improvement and development of China-India relations, so that while pursuing our respective rejuvenation, we can contribute to each other's success.
We can contribute to each other's success.
Tomorrow, Wang Yi will meet National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. He will also call on Prime Minister Modi, so it is quite the packed schedule. Things are moving very fast, and like I said, two words explain this détente: Trump's tariffs. Donald Trump wanted to strong-arm New Delhi. First, he imposed 25% tariffs on India. Then he doubled it to 50%, adding an extra 25% penalty for buying Russian oil. But here's the twist. Instead of isolating India or China, Trump managed to create a shared grievance. Both India and China have a Trump problem now. They are in the same corner of the global trade classroom, facing the same bully. And this set the stage for an unlikely thaw. Direct flights between New Delhi and Beijing are set to resume. Reports say airlines have been asked to prepare. Then we have visas. India has restarted tourist visas for Chinese nationals. Beijing is doing the same. The third part is fertilizers. China eased restrictions on urea exports, which is a lifeline for India's farm economy. Fourth, the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. China is allowing Indian pilgrims to visit again. Now, these may all look like small gestures, but together they tell a bigger story. The timing of Wang Yi's visit is no accident. On the 31st of August, the 31st of this month, Prime Minister Narendra Modi heads to Tianjin. This is for the SCO Summit, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. It will be Prime Minister Modi's first trip to China in 7 years, and Xi Jinping will be there. So if Wang Yi's trip is about laying the tracks, Prime Minister Modi's will be about driving the train forward. Is this a complete reset? The answer is no. This is not a rekindled love story. This is alignment based on interests. You see, China's relationship with Pakistan is a fact of life, plus troops still remain at the border on either side. So think of it less as reconciliation and more of a tactical pause, where both sides are hedging, not hugging. But here's the biggest irony. Donald Trump wanted to isolate China. He wanted to discipline India. Instead, he has forced them into the same tent. Call it accidental statecraft or the law of unintended consequences. Here's something Trump might even claim credit for bringing Beijing and New Delhi together. So as they say, in geopolitics, today's rival can be tomorrow's partner and yesterday's foe can be today's friend. What truly endures are interests. For now, India and China share three: steady trade, quiet borders, and some distance from Washington's grip. How long the truce lasts is anyone's guess, but for now, the dragon and the elephant have found a reason to march in step. There's buzz on Dalal Street. Indian stocks touched new highs today, with both the Sensex and the Nifty witnessing solid gains. So what is driving this surge? An announcement from the Indian Prime Minister. Listen to this.
इस दिवाली में आपकी डबल दिवाली का काम मैं करने वाला हूं। इस दिवाली में आपको एक बहुत बड़ा तोहफा देशवासियों को मिलने वाला है। पिछले 8 साल से हमने जीएसटी का बहुत बड़ा रिफॉर्म किया। पूरे देश में टैक्स के बर्डन को कम किया, टैक्स की व्यवस्थाओं को सरल किया, और 8 साल के बाद समय की मांग है कि हम एक बार उसको रिव्यू करें।
India is set to reform the GST, that's the goods and services tax. The plan is to slash tax rates in a big way. The GST is an indirect tax. Consumers pay it when they buy goods or use services. It's built into the prices that you pay at the store, and it affects nearly everyone. Unlike income tax, which is paid on earnings, GST is paid on spending. It is included in most purchases, from mobile recharge to haircuts, from clothes to cars. Whenever you buy something, you pay GST. Now, this tax is set to come down, and that matters. To understand why this move is significant, let's look at how the system works today. Right now, the GST has 4 slabs: 5%, 12%, 18%, and 28%. Reports say the government wants to cut this to just 2 slabs. It wants to remove the 12 and 28% brackets. This would leave just 2 slabs, 5% and 18%. So it's going to be a simpler structure and a big shift in India's tax system. This move could have a major impact on prices, and I'll tell you how. Most items currently taxed at 12% will be shifted to the 5% slab, and that's going to be a big drop. And this list from 12 to 5% includes everyday items like processed foods, dairy products like butter and cheese, mobile phones and computers. These are things people use every day. Now they will be taxed less. Then we have the 28% slab. Today, that rate is reserved for luxury goods like your high-end cars, air conditioners, large television sets. They're all charged 28% GST. Now, under the new plan, 90% of these products will be moved to a lower slab. They will be taxed at 18%. So that's a direct saving of 10%. Naturally, these lower taxes should mean savings for consumers. And that is why the stock market jumped today. Shares of car companies rallied. If GST is cut, they stand to gain, and gain in a big way. Small cars could get cheaper. They would be taxed at 18% instead of 28%. Fewer taxes mean more affordable cars and more sales. Insurance stocks also rose because they could benefit from lower GST too. Reports say insurance premiums could fall to 5% or even 0%. This would apply to health and life insurance. Right now, they're taxed at 18%. So for consumers, that's going to be a big saving. At the same time, remember, this is still a proposal. It has not been approved yet. The final decision lies with the GST Council. This council is headed by the Finance Minister of India, Nirmala Sitharaman. It also includes finance ministers from all states because states share GST revenue with the centre. They have a direct say in tax decisions. So this proposal will need their approval too. Every state will have to vote and think it through carefully because a tax cut comes at a cost. The government could lose up to 1.5 lakh crore rupees in revenue. That's more than $17 billion. This loss would be split between the centre and the states. The GST Council meets in October. That's when this proposal should come up for discussion. And while the tax cuts are being discussed, the government also plans to raise taxes on certain sin goods, like tobacco. Tobacco products could face a 40% tax. Reports say the government will engage with the states to build consensus. This reform holds a lot of promise. It could give a big push to consumption and demand if executed right. As always, the devil is in the detail. We'll have to wait and see how this one plays out. Social media slang has a huge fan base. It's widely used by Gen Z and Gen Alpha, or those born after 1997. But now, a venerable dictionary has joined the club, the Cambridge Dictionary. More than 6,000 new words have been added to it. Many of them are slang words. Strange sounding words like skibbity, tradwife and delulu. And this has stirred the old debate. Our dictionary is being delulu. Is this linguistic evolution here to stay? Can internet lingo pass the test of time, or at least a basic English test? And most of all, what the skibbity is going on? Here's a report.
There are wars, economic troubles, lingering climate doom possibilities, painful taxes, and if life weren't already hard enough, an additional barrage of neologisms. For the Gen Alpha, neologisms are newly coined words. And thanks to the young, all English speakers of the world are drowning in them. Often they are less words and more smorgasbord of strange sounds that seem to have been put together on a drunken night. If you can relate, you are neither alone nor delulu, and by the way, now a part of the Cambridge Dictionary. Yes, the usually honorable, often revered Cambridge Dictionary. More than 6,000 new words have been added to it. This includes a range of slangs, most of them popularized on social media, including tradwife, which is a portmanteau or a combination of traditional wife with a slightly deeper meaning. A tradwife is apparently a married mother who cooks, cleans, and of course, posts on social media. And while some definitions are niche, others are wide, so much so that they make no sense. Like the gibberish term skibbity. This is a viral term coined by a YouTube creator. If you don't live under a rock, you have probably been confused by it. Sure, some adults masquerade as skibbity know-it-alls, like reality TV star Kim Kardashian, who has a necklace engraved with the words skibbity toilet. But in the actual real world, it is hard to understand what skibbity means. The dictionary defines it as a word that can have different meanings such as cool or bad, or can be used with no real meaning as a joke. If you want to have a tough talk with a dictionary and scream, "What the skibbity are you doing?" Again, you're not alone. These additions have spurred outrage among language lovers. People say that internet culture is changing the English language. So much so that English is no longer a language. Critics say that it has been overpopulated with words that may lose their appeal as fast as TikTok challenges. But this debate is not new. Take the word ain't, for instance. It is a slang, but it appeared in American literature in the 1700s. This ensued a debate for years and invited furor. But then Winston Churchill used it in 1901. It confused people. What you do when a slang becomes so popular, it becomes a legitimate part of the language. Generation after generation has braved this dilemma. Especially lexicographers. It is their job to keep up with evolving language, to scramble in the race for relevance. So what do? They include strange slangs in dictionaries, which is why words like the ick, girl dinner, or work wife are already part of widely used dictionaries. Sure, even linguists struggle to keep up. Like in 2018, the Oxford English Dictionary made an appeal to teenagers, asking them to explain the word dank. But they almost always defend their actions. The Cambridge Dictionary says that we only add words where we think they'll have staying power. Now, no one knows if their recent additions will pass the test of time, but one thing is true. In the age of social media, dictionaries can only showcase how language is used, not police it.
There was no peace deal in Alaska, but we got plenty of jokes. The talks broke down when Putin listed his demands, like no NATO membership for Ukraine and limits on Kiev's military. But then came the ultimate red line. Putin demanded that Trump release the Epstein list, and that's where things broke down. I'm kidding, of course. If that was a real demand, the war would never end. But jokes aside, the internet is having a field day with this peace process.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
I am disgusted.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Thousands of protesters demand an end to the Gaza war in Israel. Spanish firefighters battle multiple blazes as wildfires rage across the country. And Indian astronaut Shubhanshu Shukla meets Prime Minister Modi and gifts him an Axiom 4 mission patch. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1920, the 19th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution was ratified. It gave women in the U.S. the right to vote. This capped a 72-year fight in America for equal voting rights. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
Stands at $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor
Hindi,
$30 trillion ka kaljo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
4 兆ドル以上も
Portuguese,
por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select a language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.